I'm Cindy Bertram. Thanks for joining me today on Good Ship Happens. We've had a lot of really exciting things going on this week. Yes, a lot of good ship happenings, which is great. And one thing that came up is we have different cruise lines out there, of course. And with the Norwegian Corporation, they actually have Oceanic Cruises, and they just launched their first new ship in 11 years. And it's called their Vista. And it really is a perfect name for their new ship. It's the first new ship in 11 years. And what happened is Oceanic Cruises is more luxury, of course. They're owned by the Norwegian Corporation, which actually owns a couple other cruise lines too. But what they did was they just launched this ship, which is great. And Frank Del Rio Sr. is actually the chairman of Norwegian Corporation, actually launched Oceanic Cruises years ago. And then they worked on a deal to get part of Norwegian Corporation. They became the chairman of Norwegian Corporation. He's going to be retiring on July 1st, but it was fun because they did talk about him and just with the naming ceremony and everything too, which is great. But once again, it's good to see new ships happening right now. We need that more than ever. I think it's good to really, really share positive stories about new ships coming out and bringing some wonderful different itineraries for people, as well as what you want to do. Because once again, people always ask me, okay, what do you think the best cruise line is? Well, I always tell people it goes back to really what you want to see and do, what you want to do on board the ship. Do you want a larger ship with a lot of passengers, guests? Do you prefer something smaller? What is your price point? Because once again, I think after going through this pandemic situation where people couldn't travel for such a long time, and also with the cruise industry kind of pausing for some time, maybe like 500 days, which is crazy. Once again, they got through it. And I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. And like I said, people now, I think, really recognize that experiences are so important in life. It's not buying things, but also experiences. So once again, people ask me, what's the best cruise line out there? I can't give one answer. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, what you want to do, what you want to see. Do you want to have something like a smaller type of ship, more luxury, experiential? Do you want something that has maybe a larger capacity? You might have more shows, Broadway show productions, that kind of thing. But once again, with Oceanic Cruises, really, they have always kind of brand themselves as a leading culinary cruise line, which is great. And they have a new partnership with a chef, which is great. And they've got their signature steakhouse, which is Polo Grill, which is great. And also, like I said, they've got their signature restaurant is actually called Toscana, which features Tuscan specialties. It's got its own flavor, which is great too. And like I said, it just goes back. It's so exciting to see new ships coming out, especially in the case of Oceanic Cruises, which is now having their first new ship debut in 11 years. They've got different dining options, which is great. It's inclusive, which is great too. They've got a main resort style pool, which has waiting areas, cushion lounges, day beds, shaded spaces, relaxing. They've got the Waves Grill, and they got their new Aquamar kitchen and terrace cafe in the area. But there are plenty of relaxation spots, dining spots too, between reaches too, which is great. And it goes back to they sell the grand dining room, and it remains the same as Oceana's Culinary World, which is great too. But they offer different culinary choices, really intimate seating groupings too, which is great. And once again, it's just as mentioned, they got some new dining spots. Okay, they're joining the Polo Grill. They've got Toscana, and they've also got their signature spot, Red Ginger, and they also have the new Amber. And once again, it just goes back to what you want to experience. And once again, luxury cruising, everything's included, and they've got really, really fantastic choices. Plus, they go to different areas too. So that's something else to consider if you want to maybe take a cruise in different places. It really gives you more options too. And as mentioned, let's see, it's a small ship, of course, because it is luxury. And once again, I'll be sharing more about that in the future. But it was fun to see them debut their new ship, the Vista, which is great. That's Oceania Cruises, so keep that in mind, please. Something else that came up, we have another cruise line, American Cruise Lines. What they do is they're also U.S. based, and they've been sailing for quite some time. They're privately owned. What they did was they just named their 2 new riverboats on the Snake and Mississippi rivers. And what they did was the American Cruise Lines christened the American Jazz in a canyon at the Idaho Border, and also their American Serenade along the Louisiana Bayou. And these are 2 different 180 passenger sister ships, and they're the first 2 of their new 6 modern riverboats. And what they're doing is they're all built by the Chesapeake Shipbuilding in Salisbury, Maryland. And also, by the way, with Chesapeake Shipbuilding, it's owned by the family actually owns American Cruise Lines. So how fun to have them debut 2 sister ships in their newest category brand of ships, which is great. And as far as the godmothers, this was kind of fun too. What they did was the American Serenade was actually, which is christened in Vidalia, Louisiana, on the Mississippi River, was actually, the godmother was actually Julia Lethrow. She's actually U.S. representative for Louisiana's 5th Congressional District. So she was a godmother. And then what they did was, I think it's Stacia Morfin. She's a CEO of Nez Perce Tourism. She actually named the American Jazz in Clarkston, Washington, on the Snake River. But how fun, because once again, when they christened the ships, did the namings of those 2 different ships, the godmothers were joined, of course, by American Cruise Lines passengers, their crews, executives, along with state and local officials too. And Charles Robertson, who is the president, CEO of American Cruise Lines, has mentioned that having 2 christenings, one in a desert canyon and the other on the bayou, be right now really brings incredible breadth to river cruise line options in the USA. And they also show the great growth of American Cruise Lines and the range of places that we actually explore. And it was just wonderful to hear about that too, because once again, with American Cruise Lines, they're family owned and by the Robertson family. And also, as mentioned, they actually own the company that actually builds their ships, which are smaller, which is great too. So once again, it's good to kind of see things going up as far as new ships getting christened. Cruise lines are not stopping. I think they're kind of feed through that pent-up demand, which we have. But once again, congratulations to American Cruise Lines for naming 2 different riverboats on the Snake and Mississippi rivers, which is fantastic. And once again, if you're looking for something smaller, as mentioned, these are 180 passenger vessels. And once again, they're sister ships. And these are the first 2 that are being built by American Cruise Lines as far as they're part of their 6 new modern riverboats. And the next 4 will be coming out later on too. So that was, I think, fun to really think about that happened too recently. And also something else is Celestial Journey is going to be debuting in September this year, and it's actually Celestial Cruises, which is actually really, really fantastic cruise line. And what they did was they actually acquired a ship. It was a former Holland America Line Rhine ship, and it's going to actually be making its debut this September after ongoing a lot of extensive refurbishment. And it's going to be called the Celestial Journey. That should be debuting actually this September, which is great too. So once again, something else to really, I think about as far as different options. We always hear about the major cruise lines building new ship, which is great too. I mean, it's always good to explain things that are going on too. And I know that with the, they just announced my itineraries for the Celestial Journey. That includes the 6 steps of Paul, the steps of Paul. It's going to depart actually on October 14th. Followed by a 7-night, 3 continents program, which is going to be going from October through December, and then calling up ports in Greece, Egypt, Israel, and Cyprus, and Turkey. And then they're also going to have a 19-night Christmas time voyage. It's going to be including an overnight call in Israel, So passengers will be able to actually spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in the Holy Land, which is great. And they've got other ports too. And 24% are balcony staterooms, which is great. And once again, it's just something else to think about too. Also, it's with the size of the ship, it actually accommodates 1,260 passengers, mid-size, and it has 630 staterooms, 149 staterooms actually features balconies, which is great too, because once again, once you experience sailing a cruise ship and you have a balcony, it's hard not to get a balcony on your next cruise, believe me. You want to be able to see out and enjoy the balcony. And it's great to really see the ocean or wherever you're going to. It's wonderful. So when with them, as mentioned, 149 of the staterooms are actually balcony staterooms. They've got junior suites. And with the Celestial Journey, she features many open deck areas, which is great. And they've got expansive sun decks, 2 pools on board. And they've got jacuzzis, which offer views and connectivity with the sea. Also, they've got, tranquil outdoor spaces too. They've got their beach club. And as mentioned, just a lot of different things going on. They've got different dining options, of course, and different venues on board too. So once again, just kind of to, think about that, keep that in mind too, because once again, there's so many things going on with different cruise lines, starting new ships, launching new ships. And it's good to really kind of know there's so many opportunities out there too when you're thinking about it. Something else that just came up too is when we think about cruise lines, where do they sail to? Well, once again, we've got so many options out there. I mean, years ago when the cruise industry really first started, it was actually, you took a cruise in the Caribbean. Okay, sometimes cruise ships left from California, but also Alaska was a big one too. Holland America Line has actually been sailing into Alaska for 75 years. However, something else that just came up recently is MSC Cruises, which is really expanding more than ever. They're the 3rd fastest growing cruise line, which is great. And what they did was, as mentioned, they now have 5 cities they're having their ships dock at year-round, including New York City. I was just there a little over a week ago because they just had their MSC Meraviglia dock there, and she's sailing year-round from New York City, which is great. Not just to Bermuda in the summertime. They're offering cruises to the Caribbean, also up the coast to Canada, whatever, but just great options. But something else that came on too is that MSC Cruises is going to actually be going year-round in Japan. And they just marked the start of their summer 2023 season in Japan with their MSC Bellissima at the port of Yokohama. And it's their way to celebrate their 15-year presence in the country. And they just opened sales for their winter sailing program too, which is great. So once again, you've got a lot of options out there too. And once again, seeing this on a ship, I think is really, really good because once again, the ship takes you different places. You can experience it. You don't necessarily have to worry about switching from hotel to hotel, okay? Not that's bad, but once again, the ship takes you different places. You got different options, different things to view. And once again, with MSC Cruises, offering year-round voyages really now they offer the most cruise capacity in Japan, which is great. And like I said, with this summer, the MSC Bellissima is going to be operating 8 to 9 overnight sailings from Yokohama. And then wintertime, they'll be offering cruises and different options too. And the ship will then cruise from Okinawa between January and March of 2024. And for sailing, that's going to be between Japan and Taiwan. And other cruises from 4 to 5 nights will also vary itineraries too. So once again, it just gives you another option about if you want to think about that too. So keep that in mind. Also, there's something special coming up this weekend. Okay, think about it. What's coming up this weekend? And if you're from United Kingdom, you know exactly what that is. We actually have the coronation of King Charles III, his coronation. And what's good is we actually have some special celebrations with Cunard Line. Cunard Line, of course, actually is going to have some coronation-themed activities planned for their Queen Elizabeth, their Queen Mary II, and their Queen Victoria to actually mark the coronation of King Charles III in the United Kingdom tomorrow on May 6th, which is, I think, really pretty phenomenal if you think about it, too, because once again, we're going to have a live broadcast, of course, of the ceremony, which is great. All three ships will be doing that. They'll broadcast the ceremony live from their Westminster Abbey into the ship's Royal Court theaters and their stateroom televisions. And of course, the Queen Elizabeth will be starting a 7-night tour, southern Japan and Taiwan. And also the brand new coronation celebration voyage will be on the Queen Mary second sailing round trip, which is great. So once again, it goes back to, I think, some really fun things too. When you think about celebrating, it's fun to see, of course, that they're offering a special broadcast of the actual ceremony too. As far as Cunard's royal connections, it really goes back to August of 1861. Yes, 1861, when Prince Alfred sailed from Halifax to Liverpool on Cunard Line's Arabia. And then, of course, members of the royal family have also graced each of their ships in its fleet, too, which is great. So once again, it's just been really fun to see this, and just fun to see this, too, because once again, it's good to celebrate positive things, and I think that's wonderful, too. So that's something fun that's coming up actually tomorrow. So even if we're not, from Great Britain, it's still good to really, I think, watch that. I think this will be a great, great, great ceremony too, because it's just fun to really see that too coming up to it. It's so fun to think about fun things going on in the cruise industry. Mark, did you have any questions for me yet or not? Things going on.
All kinds of things going on, and I had other things that are happening on this end as well. But I had a couple of things that you might find interesting, including apparently one of the cruise industries has done quite well and a financial standpoint. So we are seeing that the cruise industry is doing quite well, and there have been some reports of some of the folks doing even well as a stock option and all in that space. So I actually had one of the presidents from one of the industry and all in that space that was on a report that was given on one of the news media outlets where they were sharing some of their returns and some of their thoughts around how they were doing as well as they were doing and all in that space. So if you give me a second, we're going to pull up some information from the president of Royal Caribbean, because that's one of the things that I was getting all lined up and all in that space, because he was on one of the recent network affiliates and all of that space, and he was sharing some of how they were doing quite well and were pleasantly surprised at the bounce back that they were having and all in that space. And we've also got a cruise line that was celebrating its anniversary as well. So that being Oceania, which I know you mentioned earlier, and there are a couple of other things that I've got in the pocket as well, but definitely wanted to get to the first one, which was dealing with what was going on with Royal Caribbean and all in that space. I think you'll find it fascinating. I know I found it fascinating, and they were saying how they were doing quite well and were feeling quite pleased with what was taking on in that space. So it ought to be really interesting to hear it in their own words during this short interview that was held on one of the national networks, but definitely was able to obtain some of the footage and all in that space. So if you hold on one second, we're going to pull this up and see what the particular CEO had to say, and who knows, you probably even know this gentleman, and they'll share some of their thoughts. But here's what the Royal Caribbean CEO had to say about what was going on from his standpoint. Roll the tape.
First, thanks for having me today, and greetings from Oasis of the Seas. As we talked about this morning, we are not seeing any sign of weakness from our guests. If anything, we've seen acceleration, not just in terms of demand, but also their willingness to pay.
You know, Stifel analyst Jason calling it a mic drop moment really for the entire cruise industry after you reported earnings this morning. You raised your profit outlook, but talk to us about the financing environment at a time where you're trying to build your pipeline. I know you have the Icon coming out next year, one of the world's largest ships, but does that become harder to finance as credit conditions stay tight?
Yeah, so first off, whenever we enter a contract for a ship, we always have fully committed financing. So there's no issue with us in terms of gaining access for financing for our ships. And fortunately, we have methodically taken a lot of great action on our balance sheet, and we don't really see any need in the immediate or even near term in order to have to access the capital market. So you know, we're generating a lot of cash flow. This business, when it's fully up and operating, which it is now, generates a lot of cash flow and allows us to effectively service our outstanding obligations.
Maybe we just have to say it's a bifurcation in the economy. Banking stocks down, but the travel stocks outperforming on this resiliency that we're seeing in the consumer. How long can this last? I know you raise your profit outlook, but when it comes to pricing, do you see that remaining strong and the customer being willing to pay up for a cruise going into the second half of this year?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of great tailwinds for us. There's demographic tailwinds. There's secular, like you've clearly seen. You can see this in the credit card data as well as in our data. People shifting from buying stuff to buying experiences. The other thing, which is, you know, we trade still at a pretty significant discount to land-based vacation. And so I think even with the consumer, that if they evolve to be a little bit mixed, you know, they're going to, you know, fly to value. And of course, you know, we want to try to close that value gap. But we see really accelerated demand, and they're making bookings well into 24 and into 2025. So we have a pretty good sense of what they're looking to do.
And Jason, I'm curious, you know, the last time we had a bad recession, obviously 2008, that was when the consumer was overextended. They were running on fumes. They were right in the middle of the home price collapse. This does feel a little different. So how do you kind of prepare for and expect to navigate through an environment where your business, I hate to say it, but maybe could do okay? And if so, does the industry make any sort of consolidation moves, or do you think that everybody could benefit from some of the tailwinds that you're seeing?
Well, I think, well, first off, I don't really see any consolidation moves in the future. What I do see is that I think that there is this flight to value, and of course the higher quality operators, which we would describe ourselves, we feel are going to win. Best brands, best ships, best people, and the ability to deliver these incredible experiences to our guests. So I think we feel, you know, even in choppier times, there is a reality that, you know, our guests, our customers who we address, they're well employed, they have high paying jobs, and they're sitting on a lot of savings. And that puts them in a pretty good place as the market or the dynamics might change.
I think analysts were surprised by the comeback you're seeing in Europe, where itineraries accounted for about 17% of your full year capacity. How does that look going into the summer, Jason?
Yeah, well, one of our key differentiators is that, you know, our brands are globalized, and so we source our guests from all over the world. So we also source a lot of our guests for Europe out of Europe. And so that platform allows us to really kind of harvest quality demand anywhere in the world. And what we are seeing, while we were a little bit nervous earlier in the year, you know, that has completely buoyed itself. And we've seen pretty strong demand trends for Europe here as we go into the summer.
All right, stock up 47%.
And that was a little bit about how they are doing well in that particular space and everything. You had also mentioned Cunard, and I did find the float out, because apparently when the ships are getting ready to go on a cruise, they sometimes will do a float out ceremony and all along those lines. And this does bring in that new captain that you were referring to. So this is a shorter one, and then I've got a one about the history of Oceania. But right now, let's check out what Cunard is up to.
It's been an absolute honor to witness the transformation of this beautiful ship. Today's float-out ceremony is a significant milestone in the development of Queen Anne.
1 year to go, and it might seem far away, but 1 year goes so incredibly fast.
The work that has gone into this ship is absolutely extraordinary. I can't wait to see the vision come together in the year ahead as the finer details of the guest areas and the internal parts of the ship come to life.
We have so much to offer. I can't wait to present Queen Anne to our guests. and it will be such an honor to be captain of this beautiful ship.
Just a little bit less than a year from now, they will be floating out in that space. I did say that I had one other one, and this is a cruise line that is celebrating its 20th anniversary. So they've been around, and apparently they started in that quote unquote grassroots kind of history and everything. So let's learn a little bit about the history, and I'm sure you already know it, but maybe our listeners don't, about the history around Oceania.
2003, we opened our doors. We rented a space that had desks because we couldn't afford our new desks. We didn't even have a paper clip.
We were there 6 to 7 days a week, every week. And we made it through by bringing in pizza for the staff, by bringing in rum cake. A lot of Cuban coffee. Mm-hmm. And that's what we thrived on. That's how we made it through.
There was the love affair, the dream of creating something from scratch. So many of our team members that were there on day one are still with us.
They're still with us.
People are what makes all the difference. As a co-founder, our idea was to create something that's truly different.
I don't want to say we rewrote history or anything like that, but yes, we were the trailblazers.
We had a short runway to get everything done. So we had to differentiate ourselves.
At the core of what we wanted to be was authentic. We stayed true to our guiding principles from day one.
The core focus is our guest, but also making sure that we're making Oceania a great place to work and be part of our team.
And we knew that given half a chance, we'd succeed, given the team we put together. And that's all we were given, was half a chance.
Nobody thought we'd make it,
yeah.
Except us. We knew it. We had no choice. We had no choice. We went from 0 to 100 miles an hour, getting Regatta, Insignia, Nautica off to the races, beginning to make money, profits, and then we ordered Marina and Riviera.
I named this ship Marina.
I remember the entire team going down to South Beach the morning that Marina was going to sail into Miami for its christening. And we watched it coming in as the sun rose. Very emotional moment.
We're really excited about our new ship Vista next year. It's been almost 10 years since we launched a ship, and we do really pride ourselves in designing and developing ships that are real innovations.
This is an exciting step in the company's history. And now, when I see our ships and see this all happening, I realize we've really created something quite special.
We've done that by creating the finest cuisine at sea, the best itineraries, and I think the very best service at sea right now.
Truly, our secret sauce has been the rapport that we have with each other, with our travel agent partners, the rapport we have with our guests. And they are guests, they're not customers, they're guests. They are family.
We make dreams come true at the end of the day, and we're doing pretty well.
It's been that North Star for us, and when I think about the next 20 years, it's going to be that same North Star. It hasn't changed.
Now, when we started the company, many people said that we were crazy, but we didn't think so. Our shareholders didn't think we were crazy. Our travel agent partners did not think that we were crazy, and here we are today. I'd have to say, I think things worked out pretty well.
That's great. They've got a great story. And the thing is, Frank Del Rio, who actually started it with Binder, became then I think they got purchased by Norwegian Corporation. And then Frank moved up being chairman, CEO. He's going to be retiring on July 1st. And his son, Frank Del Rio, actually became president of Oceania Cruises, I think about a year ago. But just phenomenal people. And once again, it was good to share different things about that, because actually one of the people that actually was there too was Nathan Hickman. I have had the pleasure of knowing Nathan Hickman for a while. He's great. But he's very happy there. And once again, with a new ship just debuting, that's fantastic. Their first new ship in 11 years. So That's great.
That's truly amazing. But one of the other things that happens is that sometimes when people go on these cruises, they are oftentimes working and they are excited about working. So I found this little clip from Instagram of a young lady that was literally leaving from her town and getting ready to go on her first cruise. And it's a short 43-second one. And she said she may be given some TikToks and other things about her job on the cruise. But let's check out this sister as she talks about her first job on the cruise.
Hey guys, love and light. I'm super excited this morning because it's my first official start date working for American Cruise Lines. I'm currently at the airport, Memphis International, and I'm about to fly out to Salt Lake City, Utah for training. I'm super excited about the next 6 months. I'm going to be posting videos on YouTube about my cruise life. If that's something you're interested in, then I'll give you the link. I haven't posted anything yet, but best believe I will be. I'm super excited. Lift your girl up in your prayers.
That's wonderful. That's a good topic, is once again, too, it's actually something I want to write about. Okay. It's a future, maybe a book, I don't know, but the point is we've got a lot of people in the cruise industry that actually started working on ships. And so the title of this book I want to work on too down the road would be From Ship to Shore.
Right.
A couple of good examples. Pamela Hoffey, who is actually the president of Avalon Waterways. I've known her for a while. We did a Zoom meeting last year because I'm going to be right now updating my book about women cruise line presidents, but she actually worked on a ship first. Another one that people don't know about, we were talking about Royal Caribbean. Jason Liberty is the chairman, but Michael Bailey, who is the president of Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, actually worked as a purser on board a Royal Caribbean ship. He worked as a purser on Nordic Prince. That was one of the cruise ships that Royal Caribbean had sailed on a long time ago. But the thing is, he just moved different areas, but he has been president of Royal Caribbean for quite a while now. But great person, which is great because they've got great stories. And once again, they get kind of falling in love with cruise industry. Something else too is kind of fun is Bill Panoff. He was an entertainer, comedian, I think Carnival Cruise Line. And then after working on board their ships, he actually left, but he started his own company called PPI Group. And they publish Porthole magazine. Also, they had Porthole Insider, which I wrote for. It was an annual publication. Plus, he also is big on videos, whatever. But they do their Porthole magazine. It comes out digitally now, too. But once again, he's very successful, just so energetic. I just saw him a couple weeks ago at one of the cruise conferences I went to. But to actually transition from being an entertainer on a cruise ship and then launching a very successful company of the years, he's just fantastic. And people don't know about those stories. It's good to share those more than ever because it goes back to, yes, they went from ship, working at cruise ships, to shore, working at cruise lines and moving up. And Michael Bailey is a great example because he's been president of Royal Caribbean for a couple of years now. He was actually president of Subway Cruises before the different VP roles too. But the fun thing is to actually be president of the cruise line he actually worked on first, Nordic Prince, as a purser, is such a phenomenal example of wonderful things. As that young lady mentioned, of course, getting to start working for American Cruise Lines, I think is what she mentioned, but that's great too. And we need those.
Oh, yeah, we definitely need those. There's actually American Cruise Line she was working for and all of that. And apparently there is a history of working there and having a good time. So I also found this very short clip that says that it's always a good time when you're working on that cruise. So I think you'll enjoy this one because it enjoys some of the cruise members just dancing and having a good time, even though it's a short video clip. But I think that you'll enjoy this one because it says it's always a good time. And apparently this cruise line. So let's check out this little fun video.
That's great.
Yeah.
But like I said, it just you talk to people who work on ships, and it's good to interact with them too, because once again, it's almost like becoming friends too. And it's good because sometimes the energy between the cruise guests themselves and the staff is phenomenal. I mean, one time I was getting off a cruise, and I've never seen so many hugs in my entire life between the passengers leaving with some of the crew members too, which is great because once again, it's almost like we're extended family to them too. We need that more than ever. We do that because, like I said, it just goes back to my pulse. Good ship happens. But once again, going on a cruise, being able to have people do wonderful things for you, but also being able to see different areas of the world. I feel very safe on ships, of course. The views are phenomenal. What cruise lines do is, and it's taken to beautiful places too, but being able to, I love days at sea. I love being able to sit out in different places and just watch the ocean. It's very calm. It is so relaxing. I mean, there's so much too, but it's so relaxing for me too. It just it's good to relax and just enjoy things more than ever. And it's just so much fun. And like I said, you feel very pampered. You've got different choices for dining, entertainment, experiences, shore excursions. And with the luxury cruise lines, they do include those too, which is great. But once again, it's a good way to really explore the world. For instance, even with the river cruise industry over in Europe, particularly too, has grown like crazy because once again, it's a great way to really experience Europe. If you don't want to hop from hotel to hotel, right, which is great, but it's a good way to really experience Europe in a different way. And I can't imagine a better way to do it than taking a river cruise too. And also even with American Cruise Lines, which just christened their 2 new ships together, which is great. Of course, we've got American Queen Voyages, which is another very successful American U.S. based cruise line that actually sails on the rivers too, which is beautiful what they provide too. If you don't want to sit there and maybe take a big long flight, but there's so many options out there too, because once again, we've seen a lot of cruise lines now offering cruises from different ports. One thing that really has taken off again too is Port Canaveral.
Oh, yeah.
An hour away from Orlando.
That reminds me, I saw a cruise destination that I had never thought about. I actually went to school in this particular city. I didn't download this particular video, but maybe I'll do that for a later one. But I did see where there were cruises that were literally coming out of Milwaukee, because they were talking about Port Milwaukee being a popular cruise destination and all in that space. So I was in there going like, I remember there being naval bases there, so I know that there was definitely a lake there, and definitely I would imagine there might be cruises again on the Great Lakes, but I had never thought about it in that sense. But then I was going like, maybe I should have taken a cruise when I was at Marquette in Milwaukee, because apparently there is Milwaukee-based cruises, which I did not know about, and all in that space. Because
that's a good example, because last year, what they did was American Queen Voyages, actually, they had taken over 3 smaller ships right before the pandemic hit. What they did was they renovated them, but then when things started opening again too, they started sailing. They're putting one of their ships to sail out of Navy Pier in Chicago on the Great Lakes and going up to Canada, back and forth. So we're seeing a lot more of that going on too, which people don't know about. So once again, it's a good way to really experience different things and going through the Great Lakes up to Canada, which is great. Coming back, and just so many options out there too. Because like I said, Port Canaveral, which is like an hour away from Orlando, has some cruise line sail out of that back in the 1990s, not as many. And then things kind of went down. But right now, I just saw some statistics recently that said that Port Canaveral sailings are going to be more sailings out of there than like Port Miami.
And apparently, like I said, and maybe it was there when I was there. That was back in the 80s and everything. But we're going to go do it the old-fashioned way and use the old shared screen. But apparently, Octavius was the first cruise that came out of Milwaukee. And this is from one of the fine Milwaukee stations and all in that space. So apparently, this was only as of yesterday that they had their first cruise come out and all in that space. So I'm going to see if I can bring this up and we can check it out and all along those lines, because like I said, this was news to me and maybe it was news to others as well, but this is the news story coming out of Milwaukee.
The first cruise ship to make a stop in the Brew City this year is docked. The Viking Octantis arrived this afternoon in Port Milwaukee, carrying hundreds of tourists.
Fox 6's Stephanie Quirk caught up with some of the passengers as they made their way off that vessel.
65 days after Shelley Marquardt and Kathy Preem set sail, they've arrived at Port Milwaukee.
It's really surreal to be back here in Wisconsin, our hometown.
The two began cruising with the Viking Octantis in Antarctica. 9 countries and thousands of miles later, they stepped off the ship, greeted by the sounds of polka music.
Nice to be home, put our feet back on Wisconsin soil, but also share it with the rest of the people on the cruise ship.
People don't realize how many great local restaurants Milwaukee and Wisconsin has, actually. So you have to leave it to appreciate it.
Hundreds of passengers aboard will spend the day seeing and appreciating everything Milwaukee has to offer.
We're getting ready. We're going to do a beer tour today.
But while the Brew City marks the final destination for this ship, it's just the beginning of cruising season.
To the thousands and thousands of cruise ship passengers who will pass through Port Milwaukee.
The vessel is the first of 31 ships to visit this season. City leaders say it not only opens a door to the Midwest's hidden gem, but also is a driver for the economy.
When these beautiful vessels dock in Milwaukee, the dollars don't just stay on the ship. Instead, they're spread around the community.
In Milwaukee, Stephanie Quirk, Fox 6 News.
So like I said, didn't oftentimes think about that and all along those lines, but definitely apparently Milwaukee has a cruise industry, at least a little bit of a cruise industry that is there, but you don't oftentimes think about that from some of the smaller cities. Like I said, I was aware of the Great Lakes, but I hadn't really thought about the fact, and in that particular case, they even incorporated the city itself into the whole cruise situation and all in that. But definitely that was something that was news to me. And like I said, there are a couple of stories about the Octantis arriving in that particular city on this particular day. And that was, like I said, a giant cruise ship that made a stop in a, decent sized city, but not a super sized city, and all in that space. So that was interesting to see that is taking place as well. And apparently there was a first cruise ship of the season that also a couple of days ago docked in Detroit. So that same ship, the Octantis, had also docked in Detroit. So apparently the Octantis was getting around some of the Midwest cities and all in that space.
No, that's good too, because once again, people don't realize how many options are out there. We've got bigger ships, smaller ships. You've got luxury cruise lines. You've got ones that are more family oriented. But the point is, with the expansion of ships actually sailing, departing from U.S. cities, originally when the cruise industry really took off, it was Port Miami, and then of course Fort Lauderdale. But then also we had a long time ago, we had before Disney Cruise Line started, we actually had Premier Cruise Lines. They sailed out of Port Canaveral, the big red boat. Yeah. And they were actually the official cruise line of Disney well before Disney started their own cruise line. And my friend Nick, who was actually president of Premier Cruise Lines, negotiated that deal. We keep in touch all the time too. And then he left, and then Premier Cruise Lines got bought out. But anyway, then Disney started their own cruise line. But once again, we see a lot more ships actually sailing from Port Canaveral, and it's like just an hour away from flying into Orlando. So you've got different options, and we've got ships sailing out of Galveston. And now with New York, with the MSC Marviglia, she's sailing from their Brooklyn port, besides their other port, Manhattan. But once again, there's so many options, even on the West Coast. And also, if you want to sail on Alaskan cruise, because the Alaskan cruise season is open now, yes, you can sail from both Seattle and also Vancouver. And it's beautiful. I want to go back to Alaska so bad. I did Alaska cruise a long time ago. It was a life-changing experience. I sailed whales the first night. We went to Skagway, different places. It was just, and I did the White Pass Railroad trip, which went up like 1,000 feet up, whatever. Just beautiful areas, small little towns, but just such beautiful things to see, plus the glacier areas too. It was really life-changing. I want to go back there too. And like I said, cruising has been going on there for a long time. But as I mentioned, Han American Line just celebrated their 75th year sailing in Alaska.
Wow. Well, the other thing that I saw that was interesting in the news, and this was a attitude of people actually jumping to the aid of somebody, but we know that the cruises have great food, but with great food, sometimes you can have a moment of overindulgence. So there was a video, and I've seen this on a couple of clips and everything, but apparently in a couple of like recent days and everything, there was a woman that was enjoying the food and apparently was in the process of almost choking on said food, but there were some passengers there that recognized what was going on and it came to her rescue. So they probably did the Heimlich and some of the other maneuvers. So it's just good to see what you were talking about before, that oftentimes the cruises, even if they are taking a bad turn, whatever that bad turn may be, that the passengers are oftentimes willing to aid and help folks. I know that there are doctors on board as well, and I'm sure they got to the cruise ship doctor, but it was just good to see that probably folks that didn't know each other before they began the cruise and may not have even known each other during the entire time of the cruise, but they recognized what was going on and jumped into action to make sure that they could help this particular person that was finding something lodged the wrong way as they were dining on that fine cruise food.
Right. Because once again, people don't realize ships have hospitals on board. They've had them there for years because once again, the hospitals are there for their employees, but also for guests.
Right.
And people don't realize that they've got physicians on board. They've got nurses, doctors, physicians. So once again, you know, if you go to a hotel, you feel sick, what do you do? I mean, in the case of going on a cruise ship, you got hospitals right there, which is important because people, it's a way to kind of feel safe about different things that might come up too.
Right.
You know, and that's important too. People don't realize that even when we got back to cruising, really in 2021, cruise lines started small as far as their sailings. They weren't at full capacity, maybe a third capacity. But once again, at that point, you had to you had to produce your vaccination, also a rapid antigen negative test. Less than 3 days before you get on the ship. I had to do that last year when I cruised myself. But once again, they really took things the right way as far as the safety and health protocols. They got rid of the buffets and just really phenomenal things that they've done over the years too. But once again, people don't realize that they take care of their staff members, of course, as well as their guests. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they do. And people don't know about that. And I think it's good to share those kinds of things too, to kind of make sure people realize what's really going on with a cruise ship. And what they do. It is. It's important.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, sometimes I know we're going to get into some turbulent weather. So sometimes the cruise ships will also sometimes avert or try to make sure that if there is bad weather, that they are not not going into the eye of the storm if they can help it. And if they are going into it, is that the passengers are cared for as well. And so definitely, though the cruise is a wonderful thing, there are times that Mother Nature has its own mind, but I know that there are people that are tracking that weather, and if they see the storm, they will try to go around said storm or try to find ways to avoid the storms in that space.
They do it from corporate headquarters too. They can track shifts like crazy. If something comes up, they immediately let the captains and the bridge staff know immediately. They can actually move the itinerary around as needed. I've had that happen myself too, where I was supposed to be doing, I think I was supposed to be doing maybe a Western Caribbean cruise, and there was a big storm that was coming up. We switched to doing Eastern Caribbean, but once again, we're very safe, and I didn't really care. I mean, a lot of good things going on board, but the thing is they actually can navigate outside of the hurricane season because that actually starts till November now. But once again, the cruise lines really, they track everything. They've got their equipment aboard. It goes to their corporate headquarters too, as far as what they do, as far as the safety measures too.
Yep.
You don't realize that, but once again, it's all they just do such a great job, and people need to realize that too. You're not going to be sailing into a hurricane, believe me. They avoid the storm by actually moving the ship around to different itineraries, staying outside the space of the hurricanes, which is great.
Definitely have to do that. Have to be prepared for all of that kind of stuff. So they do a great job of that, and all along those lines. So that is great that they are doing those on a regular basis. So that is truly amazing, and always glad to see that they've got those things happening in that way as well. I know we've got all these great cruise lines, and there are so many amazing ones and all in that space. And even Virgin has some new ones as well. So
They do. Yes, they do. They've got 2 new ships coming up, which is great. Yes.
and I did see a video about one of those as well. So I'm gonna see if I can get that on as we get ready to wind down. But I did see that they released another video not that long ago about something that they were doing. I think they brought this one out about 4 or 5 days ago about some stuff that they've got going on as well. So we're gonna see if we can't get this up and all in that space. Well, that one's a little bit too long, so we might not be able to get to that one, but I'm gonna see if we can find some of the other Virgin ones as well. But I know Virgin is doing some stuff, and some of the other ones is really doing some major things. So we're just glad to see that this amazing stuff is happening on a regular basis, and folks need to pay more positive attention to these amazing things that are happening on this regular basis. So
The new ships always excite me. I always get excited when I hear about a new ship, which is fun. And when they get christened name, that's always fun too. And how they pick the godmothers. Like I said, I mentioned a couple years ago is when Norwegian Cruise Line was launching a new ship. They actually had Pitbull be their godfather.
who's going to be the godfather?
No, a couple years ago when Norwegian Cruise Line launched their new ship, they had Pitbull be the godfather. I was there for the christening. It was wonderful. Yes, he was actually a godfather of a Norwegian Cruise Line ship a couple years ago. It was great. I was there. He did a concert half after the christening ceremonies. We were outside, of course, Port Miami, but he did a half-hour concert for all of us, which is fun. It was great.
That sounds like that would be a lot of fun.
It was amazing. I mean, we were just singing along with Craig, just so energetic. It was very, very hot, but we didn't care. And the thing is, he was the godfather, and he christened the ship with Frank Del Rio, of course, because that's when Frank was, was chairman, of course, too. But it was just so much fun to seeing a ship christened by a godfather, not a godmother. Usually they choose a woman to be godmother of their ships too. Cruise lines do that, but sometimes they vary that too. But it's great. There's so many things that are going on.
Vary it up and switch it up every once in a while. Having a switch up is a good thing sometimes.
Yes, it is. It is, because good ship happens, okay?
Good ship is always happening. You're doing
It is, because once again, something else just came up today. We were talking about Cunard Line, and they've got their Queen Anne coming out next year, which is great, the new ship. But they just announced, this came up today, Cunard is appointing marketing professional Katie McAllister as president.
Wow.
And she's going to be Cunard's new president, and she will start her role in August this year, which is great. And she's been, she's had a 20-year career with TUI, and currently their chief marketing officer at United Kingdom and Ireland, but they just announced she's going to be moving up to being chosen as the president of Cunard Line, which is great.
That's going to be amazing.
That's really fun too, I think. And she has mentioned, on joining Cunard Line this summer, she mentioned this is such an unrivaled opportunity to join such an iconic travel company at a key point of its history. Because Cunard Line, of course, has been around for a long time. They do wonderful things. But once again, it's just so exciting to see this coming up recently, too. And, of course, she's, looking forward to their introduction of their Queen Anne next year in 2024. Yes.
So that would be great. And definitely, I think that doesn't the Queen Anne also have a female captain? Because I think that that's the captain that we saw was the lady that looked like she might have been of European descent.
No, I've not met her. I've met another female captain, Captain Kate McHugh with Celebrity Cruises, but it's good to see that coming up too, because we're seeing that, I think, on the Explorer Journeys, which is coming up in July this year. It's actually a separate luxury cruise division that's being launched by MSC Corporation. They have MSC Cruises. They've got MSC Container Shipping Company, which is, I think, the second largest container shipping company in the world. They got their foundation, but Explorer Journeys is also going to have a female captain on the Explorer, their new ship coming out, which is great. Explorer One coming out this summer, which is great too. But once again, it just goes back to these women don't get these roles because they're women. They work very, very hard, which is great. But that's kind of fun to think about too, because once again, there's so many opportunities. And even with Celebrity Cruises, one thing people are not aware of, Lisa Lufthansa has been president of Celebrity Cruises since 2014, decided to move into a different role, with Celebrity Cruises, she decided to step down as president. They've got a new woman president who just started this week on May 1st, which is great. But also Lisa is going to have some kind of an advisory type of role until next year. But when Lisa's been president of Celebrity Cruises over the years, the normal bridge staff for women might be 2%, but under her direction and guidance, Celebrity Cruises, their bridge staff actually is 32% are females. Yes. And of course, Captain Kate McHugh, I've talked about before. I've met her. She's in my second book. She's the one that has got her cat on board the ship with her. Her cat's name is Bug Naked because he doesn't have the fur, but he's always in the bridge with her too. So, but she is a phenomenal person. When she took her first cruise with her parents, her family, when she was young at 12 years old, she came back and told her dad she wanted to be a cruise director. And her dad told her, Kate, you can do anything you want to do. She got into the Maritime Academy. She graduated, couldn't get a job. She actually then applied to be a bartender. They saw credentials, but that's how she got hired. And then she moved up. And once again, with Celebrity Cruises, their recent statistics show that 32% of the women that are actually composed women that are on the bridge. So their bridge staff is actually 32% women. And the national industry average is, I think, 2% of women, but Celebrity Cruises, it's 32% women that work on the bridge on their ships, which is great too. So another great example of wonderful things going on in the industry, along with new ports and also upgrading ports, as mentioned. We've got Royal Caribbean that's working on a new port. They're updating their ports too. And I think I talked about that previously too, but once again, some cruise lines are actually updating some things in Freeport.
Yep, I'm trying to get the camera, which is having a moment of its own, back right and everything. But while it's doing that, I definitely have another one that has got some great songs and all in that space, because we've got a video from Virgin. So Virgin Voyages has got, there we go. They've got a new one as well. So let's check out what they're talking about with what they've got going on. And it's got a nice little upbeat tune. And then we'll probably get ready to wrap up very shortly and everything. But let's check out what Virgin Voyages is got going on in their space, which is very upbeat, Karma Chameleon kind of upbeat with it. So let's check out Virgin.
Right.
Desert loving in your eyes all the way. If I listen to your lies, would you say I'm someone without conviction? I'm someone who doesn't know how to sell the contradiction. You come and go, you come and go. Come on, chameleon. Come and go, you come and go. Loving will be easy if your colors are like my dreams. Red, gold, and green. Red, gold, and green. Every day is like
Let's do it again, shall we?
I love that. I love that song. I mean, they do such a great job. And once again, too, is they don't allow any kids, which we know you have to be 18 years or older to sail. But the good thing is they don't just have like one main dining room. I had a chance to be on the Scarlet Lady on it was November or September, I think, of 2021 when they finally brought out the U.S. to sail out, you know, to the delays and things. But it was good to see the ship was on board, and we had a chance. They picked one area for us to dine in. We had different choices, which is great. It wasn't just one big dining room. We had different choices, all included. And we got a chance to see a show, which is fantastic, and then really explore the ship until like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I got on board at 6 o'clock at night, which is great. And back then, of course, since it was actually September of 2021, we actually had to have a rapid antigen test done right there at the port. They did it for us, and then we were allowed on the ship. But it was great because, once again, it's just a different experience.
Speaking of different experiences, there is apparently, and this is one of the things that I saw in as I was hovering around looking at cruise news and everything, but there is one of the ships that apparently has a very unusual thing on the top of the ship. I know that you talked about pickleball and we talked about the amusement park rides, but apparently there is a ship floating around there that has a racetrack on top of it. So that is something
They do. It's been fun. I was on trying to think what ship it was.
Was it Norwegian?
Yes. The Norwegian Escape. I was on the pre-christening cruise a couple years ago. It was good to see that too. I didn't have a chance to do it, but they do different things like that, which is fun if you want to do it once again. And it's great. I mean, so many options, but so there's so many options. People say, okay, what's your best cruise? It really goes back to what you want to do, how you want to do it, and just so many choices out there, but just, you know, explore that, find out what you really want to do. Once again, too, I think it's good to talk to a travel advisor because they can actually get questions out of you, what you want to see and do, and then help you select the right fit as far as the cruise line, the itinerary, and what you want to do too. That's important.
But is this like a amusement park racetrack that I could see, or is this like a racetrack that you would have, like if you were driving the Indy or something, where there's like cars running around it that fast? So,
well, they're very safe. They're very safe, seriously, too, because once again, they don't have any crashes on board the ship. Okay, they're very, very safe. I saw people doing that was on the Norwegian Escape that evening, I think, but it was fun to watch people do it. I didn't have a chance to do it. Once again, they're very safe. You know, they got things in place. So,
well, that's good to know that they're safe, and of course, they definitely try to take place with the safety protocols and everything. But yeah, when I saw that come across my feed, that there was a one of the Norwegian ships that had a racetrack across it, I was like, that would be impressive. You're going to go there, and there's a racetrack going across the whole the beginning of the one part of the ship and all in that space. So I'm going to bounce off, but then once we close out, I have P&O Cruises, which is a small cruise line as well. So that will probably be our closing commercial. I think that's one that's from overseas because it looks like the commercial was shot in Spain, even though it features people of different cultures and all in that line. So probably close out with a P&O Cruise Line spot that's one of those 30-second ones, but I'll get ready to pop off and you can have the closing remarks while I bring up the P&O advertisement.
Okay, but there's so many options out there, as I've mentioned before, but it goes back to what you want to see, what you want to do, where you've been before, where you want to go back. As mentioned, a favorite cruise I did several years ago was Alaska. I do want to go back to Alaska. It was life-changing. And once again, so beautiful to see what you see when you get to little ports, they're very small ports, you know, Skagway and of course Juneau, but beautiful areas, such exquisite places to see too. I've not had a chance to do a river cruise line over in Europe. I'd love to do that too. We have more options going on like crazy, which is great. And also with new ships coming out too, a lot of new ships. And once again, you've got a little, looks like Luxury Cruise Lines 2 with Explorer Journeys debuting actually this summer in July. The Explorer 1 is their newest ship. Luxury, high-end, and their mindset is bringing the ocean life to sea, which is great. It's just beautiful what they're doing too. So once again, I'll be sharing more about Explorer Journeys with their Explorer 1 debuting this summer. So once again, thanks for joining me on the show today. We'll talk more about fun things in the next week or two, which is great because once again, there's so much news coming out now. And even with, you know, Cunard Line doing those special celebrations with the christening tomorrow, which is great. And once again, they've got those ties with Great Britain anyway, but that's kind of fun that they're doing too on board 3 of their ships too. So once again, until next week, Good Ship Happens, which is great. I'll be sharing more about new ships coming out, itineraries, people, just sharing more wonderful, positive news too. So thanks again for coming with me today on Good Ship Happens. Thank you.
We hadn't spent proper time together in ages.
That looks very uphill.
So when Gracie said we should go on a cruise, she didn't need to ask twice. We made friends with the locals, we tried new food, we laughed a lot. Just like old times. That girl there is my best friend. And this holiday reminded me why.
Find your moments that matter with up to £300 off at All Protected.